Hey, welcome to this TechCast series on Node.js. This is our third series on JavaScript. We covered already JavaScript, the language itself, and we covered JavaScript in the browser. And now we're going to spend some time with JavaScript on the server side. Let's quickly take an overview of this whole course. There are 21 videos in this series, and the goal is we are going to write vanilla JavaScript and explore the space as much as possible without incorporating any other frameworks. So we're not going to pull in Express or Next or whatever other popular frameworks that are out there. And we're going to start off in this video, video 1, with a historical perspective of what JavaScript is, where it came from. And very quickly, we're going to ramp up to the point where we have written a complete application using an MVC architecture. And this application includes a lot of features, including middleware, validation, routing. And as we progress, we will introduce concepts to build out each of those features. Here we are in video number 1. And in this video, we're going to talk about the history of JavaScript and start to explore JavaScript on the server. And I found this interesting quote by the creator of JavaScript on the marketing orders, essentially to build something Java-like, the language Java, but not too big. But I think at this point, it's safe to say that JavaScript certainly has grown much larger than this initial expectations. I do want to take a moment and set the background for what we've already covered in the previous videos. There's a video series here. It says 25 videos, 4.5 hours of JavaScript for beginners. So let's open this up here. And in this video series, we cover ECMAScript. It's the syntax or the foundations of the language itself. And we start with language basics like variables and operators and control flow. Then we start to get to more complex applications eventually, like closures and ES6 classes and inheritance. And again, those 25 videos are for free on TechCast. It's a beginner series, and those are always for free. So I encourage you to go and start there. And the other thing that we've covered in TechCast is we have 16 videos on JavaScript in the browser. And we can take a look at those real quick. The first 5 of those are free. We're covering everything about the browser runtime environment, including things like selecting or modifying elements. So we're talking about the event loop and timers. And then we end up reviewing some front-end frameworks. So both of those are available as a starting point. If we look at a brief overview of the history of JavaScript, we can see that it was started in 1995 by Netscape. It was originally intended just as a way to add interactivity to the front end on browsers. Now, an interesting thing happened in the late 90s and the early 2000s. Browsers like IE and Chrome and Firefox were kind of in this war where they were trying to get market space. And in the beginning, it was very chaotic. Every browser had different implementations of what JavaScript looked like. And as a result, we eventually ended up with ECMAScript. ECMAScript is a standardization of the JavaScript language. And now these days, most browsers are compliant with ECMAScript. And yes, leading edge features of JavaScript may get rolled out into browsers at different times, but as a baseline, browsers are much more compliant and standardized these days. And as mentioned earlier, JavaScript was for front end only. And that changed. And then Node came along. And JavaScript was no longer just a front end language, but now we started to see it on the back end. And Node was introduced in 2009. Essentially, Node takes the V8 engine from Google and wraps it with some system bindings so that it can access things like files and other resources like the network. And as mentioned here, Node is event-driven and non-blocking. And there's a link here to the Node documentation that discusses this and even dives a little deeper into a very specific article on blocking versus non-blocking, and you can see that all there. I'm not going to dive into this in this video, but we go into a little bit more depth in a future video on this. We'll spend a moment here and talk about why JavaScript on the server. And here are some benefits of using JavaScript on the server. So first of all, you have a whole bunch of developers who already have the capability of writing JavaScript on the front end. And now those developers can use that same skill set and write code for the back end. We're talking a lot about Node, but really there's an ecosystem here with Node, which includes a package management system called NPM. And NPM allows developers from around the world to create modules or libraries or frameworks and submit them to a repository so that other developers then can add them as dependencies to their projects. And that saves a lot of time. So as a developer, I don't have to reinvent the wheel on certain features. I can just download or add a dependency to my project. And there are a lot of use cases for having JavaScript on the front end and the back end. I'm not going to cover all of them here, but there's a lot of examples here, including some links to some of the frameworks and libraries. I will look at this IoT. I think this is interesting now that you can have, for example, like Arduino boards and run your JavaScript on an Arduino board. And I think that's a pretty interesting use for JavaScript. So in this particular video, we're not really going to cover a lot of code. This is an introduction, mostly a history, but we are familiar with, for example, JavaScript in the browser. It looks like this. In fact, if I look at the page source for this particular page, at the very bottom, you're going to see exactly that code. So I added that script to this page here. And so if I pull up the developer toolbar and I inspect and I go to the console, and you'll see that text, hello from the browser. In this particular case, the browser's runtime environment for JavaScript is executing that script and writing that hello from the browser text. So if I copy and paste this command line here, we're going to use a terminal window, and I'm just going to use the terminal window in WebStorm. This is going to be my development environment. If I paste this in and I execute it, you can see that Node is doing the same thing. Console login out hello from Node.js. So this parallels and shows that JavaScript on the client side or JavaScript on the server side, you can do a lot of the same things in both. All right, let's move on to a very simple example. And again, we're not going to cover the details of all of this code. We're just going to take it for what it is right now. I'm going to copy the command line, and we're going to go back into our development environment, WebStorm. I'm going to look at video 1, and here's the code for video 1. And you can see that exact same code is here. At the very bottom, I'm going to enter that command that we just copied and pasted. So I'm going to have Node run this file. And you'll see it starts up a server, and it's running on localhost port 3000. If I click this, I get that request being sent to the server, and here's the response, hello from the server. And you can see that that is the hard-coded response that we have programmed in using this particular file. So that's it for this video. I wanted to keep this short and simple, just cover the history, introducing this video series. In the next video, we're going to get started with the installation of Node. We're going to talk a little bit about the interactive mode that you can play around with, which we won't use that much in this video series. And then we're going to run our first official Node script. So I will see you then.